There's a voice in my head. It's been narrating my life for as long as I can remember. The question is, whose voice is it? For most of my life, I thought that voice was me. And then I think about the line from Men in Black. Tommy Lee Jones tells Will Smith, 1500 years ago, everybody was sure that the earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody was certain the earth was flat. 15 minutes ago, you were certain that humans were alone on this planet. Imagine what you'll know tomorrow. That line has stayed with me for years, but it isn't about astronomy. It's about certainty. What if some of the things you're most certain about aren't true? I can think of a certainty that I had that collapsed. A few years before my marriage ended, my husband and I were having a conversation, and everything was just kind of going great at the moment, right? My life felt settled, our life felt settled. We were safe. We were talking about how lucky we were and how good our marriage was. And without me even saying anything, he offered that if anything had ever happened to me or to our marriage through some unforeseen circumstance, that he would never remarry. Maybe someday, way down the road, he'd get a girlfriend, but I was the love of his life, the one true love of his life, and he would never marry again. A couple of years after our divorce, my husband remarried. And I used to hear that as a memory that it was evidence somehow he had been lying to me all along. And maybe he was, but I no longer think that that's the most interesting explanation. I think maybe he was telling the truth as he understood it in that moment. And so was I. I believed that we could be happy for the rest of our lives, just like that. Those two people in that room, we believed it. Neither one of us could have imagined what would come next. And that taught me that certainty is not something I thought it was. It isn't evidence. And it got me thinking about whose voice is that, anyways? Well, it's the narrator. There's a narrator. I have one. I know not everybody does, but there's a voice in your head talking almost all day long. And here's the wild part, that voice is not necessarily you. It may sound like the catastrophizer, the critic, the perfectionist, the people pleaser. It may come with fear, shame, your mom, your ex, or the culture that you were raised in. The problem isn't merely that we have negative thoughts, it's that we give those thoughts unearned authority. I spent decades believing every thought in my head deserved equal authority, and it doesn't. Have you ever replayed the same argument for the 47th time in your head, spiraled for 3 hours over something that's never even happened? Heard a voice say, "You're too old, it's too late, you're too much, you're not enough," and believed it without asking for any evidence? I know I have. Have you ever wondered why you keep dating the same man in different pants? I have spent decades calling my thoughts, and they're not at all. Some of it is inherited, someone else's fear, someone else's shame, someone else's rules. And that inherited voice played a really strong role in my life. I married very young, and it cut my education short. And I remember my mother telling me that I would never achieve the success I was meant to achieve. And I believed her at the time, but I kind of fought against her or fought against the voice. It drove me a little bit. And I went on to have a very successful career. So I thought I had disproven her. But years later, when that career was over and that marriage had ended and things had fallen apart, it came back. What if she was right after all? What I understand now is that she was not predicting my future. She was revealing her own fears for me, and that I had carried that fear forward as if it was a fact. I rebuilt anyways. I started a marketing company, a consulting business, a podcast, not because the voice disappeared, because I finally stopped giving it authority. Sometimes the voices we inherit don't disappear when we succeed. It hadn't for me. It just waited for me to become vulnerable again. So, who am I? I'm actually the watcher or the listener of my circumstances. I'm the watcher of my circumstances and the listener of the narrator. I am the watcher. If I can hear that voice, observe it, and question it, then it cannot be the whole of me. So, who am I? I'm the one who notices. I'm the watcher. And I don't know, the watcher interrupts the automatic sequence. I get triggered. I have a thought. It generates an emotion. I have a reaction, right? And instead, now something comes up. I get triggered. I have a thought. I become aware that I'm having a thought and I get to make a choice. What a liberation to realize that the voice in my head is not who I am. The mind is not the enemy. It is an extraordinary tool. It recognizes patterns, calculates risk, remembers details, it keeps track of things, it solves practical problems. But somewhere along the line, many of us, including me, have handed the tool the keys to the whole damn house. I would never hand a hammer control of my life and ask, what should I resent today? What disaster should I rehearse for the next 6 hours? But many times I have done that with my mind. Thinking is not always intelligence. Sometimes it's just noise. A thought can knock on the door. It doesn't automatically mean the door has to be answered. I recently read an article about artificial intelligence. And the thing I took away from it the most was that competence is not consciousness. I mean, we keep asking the question, when will artificial intelligence become sentient? I have a different question. When will we? Okay, biologically, we're conscious, but how often are we truly aware of the programming that's running our lives? You can be incredibly successful and still be unconscious. I learned this myself. If I were to think about the problem of that, it's like bad wiring, bad programming. It's because I believe the thoughts in my head that maybe I should pay attention to, become aware of, but then try them on and see if they're true or not. Sometimes it's just a thought. And here is one way that I prove that I am not the voice in my head, because I have heard the voice and acted differently. The voice speaks, it no longer dictates the decision. Did you send the email anyways? Did you leave the bad marriage anyways? Did you speak up anyways? Did you launch a podcast anyways? Then you heard the voice and didn't automatically obey it. That is freedom. So I can tell you about one time that I made a different choice. A neighbor's dog had attacked me, and I just knew I couldn't stay in this house anymore. I started looking for another one almost immediately, but I was looking for it with this near impossible list of qualifications that it had to have. I had a very strict budget. I put all the criteria that I had into Zillow, and I knew that if a house matched my very exacting standards, it would pop up. And then one day I checked and there was a house. And this is after days and days of nothing come up, nothing coming up at all. Immediately, the voice kicked in. You can't afford this. It's too soon. What if you lose everything again? I had a friend who was a realtor and he got us an appointment to go look at the house. He encouraged me to make an offer. He was new, he needed practice. So I went ahead and let him make the offer. That night he called. They accepted it. Now I'm panicking instead of celebrating, right? The appraisal came in low. I negotiated really hard. The sellers kept giving me concessions. I mean, it kept falling into place despite the voice in my head that said, don't do this. I just kept one foot in front of the other, taking the next action. And the night before closing, I remember I walked through the house and I thought all their stuff was gone. And I don't know if you know how terrible a house looks like the night before closing when they people have moved out, but nothing has been cleaned really, particularly. Well, I was aghast and I had just made up my mind I wasn't going to close. And underneath it all, it was an old story. Who do you think you are? What makes you think you deserve a beautiful home after everything that's happened to you? You know, the money, the setback, what if? And I closed anyways. The next morning, I closed anyways. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. Thank goodness I didn't listen to the voice. Since that happened, I've remodeled the house piece by piece, bit by bit. New roof, new this, new that. The gardens have grown. Over the years, they've gotten more and more beautiful. I've had family members come and stay with me. I had a sick friend come and stay with me once. Women I counsel sit around my kitchen table and in my living room, and we have wonderful conversations. The voice wasn't wrong. It was trying to protect me, trying to keep me safe uh, from some old idea and old fear. I still hear the voice sometimes. I just don't let it make as many decisions anymore. And it wasn't just the house. I felt a nudge to start the podcast. I was encouraged to by more than one person. And it still was like a year before I finally hit publish. It's the same voice. Who do you think you are? Nobody's going to listen. You're starting too late. I heard it and I published anyways. And if I hadn't, we wouldn't be here together today. I'll give you a caveat to that. And somebody once told me very wisely, never believe your own press. And I think that what they meant by that is including the press releases issued by your mind. One day, the headline is Woman of the Year. The next day, it is Fraud Discovered. Neither edition is objective journalism. I chair the board meeting in my own head now. Everyone gets a chance to speak. Not everyone gets a vote. And for certain, whoever I am, the watcher, is the only one who gets veto power. Not every voice in my head deserves a vote. And then it's about becoming the author, the way to author your life. I guess to question what the narrator calls the truth. For me, it is like becoming the author of your life instead of just the player on the stage listening to the voice. Question what the narrator calls the truth. The narrator makes a claim, the watcher notices it, and the author decides what happens next. The author's job is not to be certain. The author's job is to question. Why do I believe this? Where did this story come from? Is it true? Is it still true? Is it mine? What evidence contradicts this? What becomes possible if I stop treating this as a fact? Can I write what comes next differently? Imagine what you will know tomorrow. Imagine what belief you currently call the truth that your future self may understand completely differently. I don't think we wake up just once. I know for me, I didn't. And if we're lucky enough, we can wake up over and over again. Disruption is painful, but it can expose the limits of an old story, a divorce, a betrayal, addiction, grief, aging, career change, financial collapse, or simply realizing that your life no longer fits. Sometimes life disrupts us enough that we finally stop and ask, who is doing all this thinking? Some people just get older. Other people wake up late. Growing up late is waking up repeatedly throughout your entire life. So today, notice one voice in your head. Don't fight it, don't shame it, and don't automatically obey it. Just notice it and ask yourself, who is hearing this? You don't need the answer to the question today. Just begin noticing. Growing up late is not waking up once. It's having the humility and the good fortune to wake up again and again while remaining curious about what we may know tomorrow. Because the moment you realize the narrator is not necessarily the author, you have begun to reclaim the story. Imagine what you'll know tomorrow.